Evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting to order. City of Twinsburg, Twinsburg Government Center, 8 p.m. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Here.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Mr. Scafidi?
Here.
Mr. Bellin?
Here.
Ms. McFerrin?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Almighty and eternal God, you know the longings of men's hearts, and you protect their rights. In your goodness, watch over those in authority so that people everywhere may enjoy freedom, security, and peace. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need approval of the minutes from April 24th, 2018. Are there any changes? Okay, minutes will stand as written. Are there any awards? No awards or presentations tonight. Audience participation.
Yes, we have Rich Swerbinski.
Good evening. My name is Rich Swerbinski, 11 years Twinsburg resident. Been on the Twinsburg Baseball Board of Directors for about 8.5 years. President last 3.5. Served on Parks and Recreation Committee for a little over 2 years. So here tonight to recommend that the City Council obligates funds towards a new baseball field at Liberty Park for 2019. The need is real. If you look at the baseball field situation in Twinsburg, it's unique. We have 4 fields at Liberty Park. We have 4 fields at Glenwood Park, 1 field at Idlewood, and then a bunch of school fields. Twinsburg baseball primarily uses Liberty Park, the 4 fields there. Girls softball uses, I would say, 60% of Glenwood, and Idlewood exclusively. There's also some men's leagues and other things at Glenwood that we have very limited access to Glenwood. Which causes us to rely heavily on the schools' fields, which we just have no control over them. And even fully using the schools' fields, I mean, we're really at a point now, we've had a unique situation in Twinsburg where we've been able to really significantly grow the number of kids inside the city that are playing baseball year over year. The numbers are up big time over the course of the last 5 years, especially at the younger age divisions. We've done a lot of outreach to parents of young children. We're at a point where approaching a point where even with full use of the school fields, we're going to need to cap registration. There's more demand than there is field space. You have a year like this year where it rains for the entire month of April. Everything gets smushed back. It creates all kinds of problems. So the finances of it are, we've had a contractor come out and quote the price of a new field at Liberty, which is, as everybody knows, able to host a few more baseball fields if needed. The quote was between $250,000 to $325,000. That was for a field bigger than the one that we feel would make the most sense. We feel like a smaller field would be the most need. All the fields in Twinsburg are cookie cutter, like 200, 250. The biggest need is for younger and older kids. I would say like 2nd grade and below, and 9th grade and up is where the true need is. So. Twinsburg Baseball League is also in a pretty unique position financially. We're really have been able to position the league where we do a lot more. There's a spring league, there's a fall league, there's a huge wiffle ball tournament. We've got one of the biggest travel baseball tournaments. We're, at the end of the day, generating about $40,000 to $45,000 a year in the revenue over expenses. It's put us in a position where we have a pretty significant cash reserve of about $135,000. And the baseball league and the board, we'd have to approve this with our board, but the board we have strong support for the board to approve allocating a large amount of money towards a new field at Liberty. I mean, it's been kind of what we've been working towards as a board for years, is we've been looking for ways to raise revenue and cut expenses to build the revenue to a point where we could help do something that would impact kids for 20, 30, 40 years in the city. So just a quick review of our finances. Our executive committee, I mean, at a minimum, we'd be able to commit $85,000, potentially more than that, towards the project. If you look at the number as well, I really believe through a couple of things. There's a few grants that are out there. There's one that Derek and I have already really compiled all the information for called Nature Works. It's due June 1. That in addition to that, there's a few different baseball-related funds. There's one that the Cleveland Indians do that Twinsburg actually got $15,000 from about 5 or 6 years ago. MLB has one called the Baseball Tomorrow Fund that doles out a ton of money annually. I really feel with the story here in Twinsburg, the quality of application we'd be able to put together, I really strongly believe that grant funds are very realistic, if not from multiple sources. That's not even considering sponsors, other things we could do, contractors that are friendly to the Twinsburg Baseball League. We have 45 companies that sponsor TBL every year. Companies love sponsoring the Baseball League, have absolutely no problem selling banners for $800 and teams on jerseys for $600 or $700. Just believe there's a wealth of ways through TBL-friendly contractors, companies that have already sponsored the Baseball League for a long time, entities like UH and the clinic. I feel like there would be, strong appeal to, maybe even being a feature sponsor at a new field at a bigger price tag. So, long way of saying, I really feel like there is a way to dramatically decrease the city's financial obligation to this field, to give Liberty something that it's equipped to handle, that it needs, and something that would have a big time impact on the youth of this city for a long time. So there's somewhat of a sense of urgency from the standpoint that the NatureWorks grant is due on June 1, and some sort of obligation on paper would be needed to complete the grant application package. So that is it's an overview. I don't know if anybody had any questions.
What's the grant, Rich?
So Derek,
how much, and is there is there a match and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So NatureWorks, Derek, I don't know if you could.
Yeah, Summit County's allocated this year $180,000. It's different by county, and the match is 25%. But we would need to put in the grant resolution, like I think Nate usually gets them too, that's, the city is going to allocate these funds if the grant is received. So that's what, we can fill in.
So it's 180,000 for the whole county?
100 for the whole county. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think we would go in asking for 180 or 150, maybe around that 100,000 mark is the current figure that I have on the project. But, it's just if we wanted to, move forward with that, I would need that legislation at the next council meeting to then need to apply, or else we're going to be going to next year and the allocation amount can change, but it'd probably be, usually it's a little late this year, usually the deadline's earlier in the year, but it was a little later than this year.
And you said a 25% match?
Yes, which would be just from the baseball league's funding. And I think we would score higher on the grant just with a partnership with another agency that usually increases your points. So I think that would give us a couple extra points on that grant, just knowing that we'll get a letter of support from TBL and an allocation of funds from TBL as well.
So that would be, if we got 100, that'd be 185. What does it cost to really do this project?
I think
You said
we need to
between
put in a ball field or a
250 and
parking
3.
lot of some sort. I think we'll be in that 300,000, 325. But we would need to go and have an engineer come out and write a complete spec and get constructual drawings, and that's included in that.
Did you say without a parking lot?
No, we would need some sort of parking lot, but using that access road that's currently there to the shelter and near the batting cages, building it off of that and maybe even doing it similar to the dog park where it's a crushed grinding parking lot. But we even need some water control or stormwater control as well up there, retention basin of some sort.
Does that 300,000 include the parking lot?
The one quoted did, yes. But again, this isn't a asphalt parking lot.
Right.
That was, where did this quote come from?
We had three different, one is the original developer of that, so we have I have three quotes so far, and they're all in that ballpark. Two are the ones that we just worked on different projects within the city.
And so when it's committed, then what's the timeline for getting the money and starting the project?
Well, getting the money, you have to see if we get the money.
Right.
We could get zero. We could get half of that. We could get 75%. That's an unknown amount. But that would be that's all determined and then allocated, and then this would be then put on my 2019 capital request, and then for construction. That's when we have to work with TBL. What's the best time of year to do this? Are we going to impact the neighboring field with construction? You know, so we'd have to coordinate that. Is it better to go in, and could it go in the spring, or is it better in the fall or summer? So we have to work. So this would be go out for the grant this year, and then capital requests for 2019.
And so this is we would be affecting then the field that is, not the ball field, but the field area back behind field 4 and the cage, which would be further south?
It'll be closer actually to the backside, would be kind of near that shelter.
Okay.
So you don't
Would
have
it
to walk all the way back.
would it affect the shelter and the would it
That
affect
would stay put.
the shelter and the cage would stay put?
Yeah, but it'd be
Okay.
tucked in just south of that shelter.
Okay. Okay. So actually closer to Liberty than I thought. Okay.
Yeah, that's where
Okay.
that parking lot,
Yep.
stretching out that would fulfill.
Makes
that.
sense. Okay.
Would it be, then is that encroaching into the grassy area?
The meadow, I mean,
The
yeah,
meadow?
but the meadow was meant to just be active recreation at some point anyway, so we would lose some of that meadow.
Yeah, that area is always planned to be
Oh,
an
yeah.
expansion of Liberty,
That makes sense.
of Liberty Park.
Those additional 4 fields after.
Yeah.
And then you said there was potential with the Cleveland Indians Fund, Baseball Tomorrow, for other funds. Do you have an idea what that might be?
Those are grant funds that are open throughout the course of the year. I believe the Indians is quarterly, application deadlines, and the MLB is just open. I think MLB is pretty open about the fact that they don't even give away annually what they allocate because of what they ask for out of the application process. It's pretty intensive. It's something we could comply with. So I do think that there's a strong possibility to secure some additional funding there as well. So.
Do we have any idea, and I don't know if this is for Derek or who, what adding an additional field would cost us in terms of maintenance and upkeep and those kind of things once, theoretically, once it's built?
Well, the nice thing with working with TBL is TBL maintains most
Mhm.
of Liberty Fields,
Mhm.
so that's beyond that.
Okay, so yeah, I guess it's a question for Rich then. Is there an additional cost,
I
or
mean, it
what
would-
is that additional cost for an additional field?
Yeah, so we have a 4-person, 2 of them right there, named apart, 4-person, highly trained, highly competent field crew that just does an unbelievable job.
Fields are in amazing
I
shape,
mean,
guys.
it's-
They really
All
are.
you gotta do is go up there.
Yeah.
So there would be, it's part of our annual
Okay.
budget. So there would be some additional expense to us, but it would be somewhat nominal. I also believe too that just when you start to get into the scope of the project that, they're not volunteers, but they're working for far less than they're worth. We've got some 17, 18-year-old kids that do a great job too that we've trained. I do believe that there would be the ability to help mitigate some of the labor costs related to things related to the project by utilizing our crew. And our crew has such a great working relationship with the service department, and it works really good. We take care of everything in the season. They help us kind of after the season and mow the lawns, obviously, but that piece of it would be really smooth. So,
Hey Derek, do you have any other big projects coming up this year or next year, or any big ticket items you're going to be looking for in your capital?
We do, but I don't think anything within
No.
the next year or two. I think in my neck of the woods and big ticket items, we're looking at an amphitheater upgrade at some point, but I have that over the next few years, but nothing.
But nothing 18, 19?
I know there's a playground, but that would fall probably under service. But again, that doesn't have to be immediate either at this point.
I know we've talked about the fitness center locker room, the other side.
Yeah, I was talking,
Parks and
you're
Rec.
looking at fitness center and parks and
Yeah,
Rec.
looking
Yeah,
at
the
the-
other side of the
Yeah.
locker room needs to be done at some point here, and that.
We just refreshed it, but it was still something that
Still needs-
ultimately
Mhm.
was planned. I commend you guys for coming to the table and bringing the money, and I think I've always had it on my radar to try to expand Liberty Park. I think we've talked about that before. I think you do have opportunities to find some private partnership to whether it's a labor or it's a monetary partnership on a project this size. We'd have to probably have a discussion regarding going out to bid and how we would coordinate. If you got a contractor that come in, I'll bring in equipment and we'll prep the site for you for free or for a banner or whatever it may be. You know, we'd probably have to coordinate that and make sure we're doing it the right way. You know, because I know there's prevailing wage issues on big projects and a lot of different things. So, you know, I guess council can probably have a discussion about going out for the grant. We can find out more details from Derek. Are we applying for that grant for anything else?
No, I'm not. Are you applying for anything?
No. The restroom, I thought we were.
Yeah, I'm not moving.
Yeah, I thought that.
Okay.
What risk?
So I thought that was on your capital, the restroom. I
That was,
recall.
but it didn't get approved for this year.
It got pulled
Oh.
It got pulled.
and refreshed. Be refreshing things right now. And so I think, you know, you need a decision by June 1st. So before the next council meeting, I guess council can have a discussion regarding their thoughts on it. You know, if there's anything else we can pull together, and I'll do what I can to help you. You know, in terms of any kind of public-private partnerships, we are talking and looking at different ways to do partnership around the whole entire city. So there's probably a meeting that we need to have regarding those fields and what's happening there and what's all going to be going on a citywide basis, and there's maybe things that we can work out. So, but you know, I thank you guys for coming to the table with this, because it's not a very common thing where you have youth organizations offering up significant dollars to do projects like this.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And if anyone needs any additional info about the grant or anything, you can reach out to me.
How big was the parking area that was?
I think it was in about 30 plus cars, somewhere around 30.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
Thank you.
much, yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it, thank you.
Anybody else? Is there any other audience participation?
There is none.
Okay. We're going to move on to council communication and committee reports. Mr. Fury?
The next Twinsburg CIC meeting will be on May 15th at 5:30 in the jury room. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steele?
ARB met last Thursday. They had one case, which was a attached garage on Cannon Road. They approved it. It had been through, I think, BZA, or because they needed to, some setback variances on it because it was a much bigger garage than what our ordinances allow. But that was approved, and they approved it, so that was it.
Anything else? We're good.
That's it.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. The Board of Zoning Appeals met on the 25th of April, and they heard appeal number 4, 2018, which was a Cannon Road resident came in to put in a 1,000 square foot addition on the garage. Specifically, a 1,274 square foot area variance was requested, and after the board reviewed that, they approved it 5-0. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the 30-day waiting period on appeal number 04, 2018. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Fury, second. Any discussion? Shannon, call the roll, please.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Thank you. The next meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals will be tomorrow, the 9th, at 6:30 right here in the council chambers. Charter Review has had their, I believe it's their 4th meeting already, and they're cruising through the charter pretty good, and there's been some really good discussions and some suggestions that will be coming before council. And their next meeting will be on this Thursday the 10th at 6 o'clock right here in the council chambers as well. What else do I got? Public Works Committee meeting was canceled for this evening due to lack of agenda items. And one motion that I would like to make in the caucus meeting, we had gone through ordinance 59, and there was one item in there, and that's setting up the get to it.
Budget.
Would we do that under legislation?
We could do it now, can
Will you be looking to amend that particular piece of legislation? Is that going to be the
Yeah.
intent?
Yeah.
I think from a mechanical issue, a minutes issue, to do it at the time of that
So
reading.
just do it at the time,
Yeah.
okay. But I'm sure council's aware that we're going to be amending 59, and that's it. But that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission met on May 7th. There was a preliminary site plan for a Zoom car wash. It was tabled, but it seems like a pretty nice car wash that he is going to come back after planning had made some suggestions. Hopefully that'll work out. And then the rezoning request for the C2 to C2 R5, he didn't show up, but they didn't have a full vote anyways, so he did not show up, and that's all I had. That's the only meeting I had.
Maureen?
Yes.
That car wash is where the house, the old house down by, yeah.
It's over
south
here,
there,
yeah, it's
where
down by
they just-
Heartland,
We
yeah.
just passed it,
With the tree?
the AR,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
what's going in, or proposed to go
Yeah,
in on that
it's
side.
proposed. It looks like a nice car wash. I hope it, hope it works out.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big
I
one.
think there's one of them in
I wish it was a
Stowe.
three-story.
That's
Yeah, there
exactly
is.
what he said. There's one
On,
in stuff, yeah.
That's,
It's on 59, it's between Fish Creek and the Kent line,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah,
Right.
it's right there.
you know.
Yeah, it isn't a big car wash.
Yeah, it looks like it. They take it, they've done a good job with it. That's all I have. Ms. McFerrin.
The Community Relations meeting will be on June 21st at 5 p.m. at the Twinsburg Library. May 21st, the Friends of Twinsburg Parks will be meeting at rush hour at 7:30. The Parks and Rec Department did meet on the 26th of April. There was a lot of discussion about the Friends of Twinsburg Parks, about the 5-year plan, and scheduling a time to review that. Everyone's getting ready for the upcoming concerts in the park series, and there'll be some upcoming exciting changes at the fitness center to increase membership and revenue. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody who went out today and exercised their right to vote. Furthermore, I'd like to specifically thank those residents that were working the polls. They closed about half hour ago or an hour ago, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. Construction continues on Joanne and Lila Place, including Terrace Drive. They closed the day of our last council meeting, and they think they're going to be closed for about 6 weeks. So please just keep it slow and drive safe through there. Next Golf Advisory Board meeting will be next Tuesday, May 15th at 6:30 p.m. right here in Council Chambers, where I'll be swearing in our new Advisory Board members. And as Councilman Scafidi said, our Public Works Committee meeting from earlier this evening was canceled. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barr.
Thank you very much. The Twinsburg Environmental Commission had its last spring meeting on May 1st here in Council Chambers, and got a couple of things kind of ironed out. Tentatively, we are looking at October 13th for a community cleanup, and we're going to try and coordinate some things with the Twinsburg Garden Club, Friends of Twinsburg Parks, and a couple other groups to try and really capitalize on that event this year. We want to continue to grow that community cleanup day to address as many areas as we can. The Environmental Commission awarded 3 scholarships of $500 each from the Stewart Foundation, and May 10th is the scholarship night at Twinsburg High School, so anybody that would like to attend. The 3 students were all participants in the Earth Day display. We had 1 display and 2 written submissions for scholarships. The students are in the process of being notified, so we won't disclose any names as of yet. But that'll be a great night. Again, that's May 10th. It's Twinsburg High School Scholarship Night. And the City of Twinsburg Environmental Commission and Public Works will be hosting the much-anticipated community shredding Saturday, September 15th. It'll be from 9 to noon at Public Works. We're going to have 1 truck this year, holds 12,000 pounds. That sounds like a lot, but it's really not. So get there early, like Councilman Scafidi did last time, not late, like Councilman McFerrin did, who got turned away. So that is always a very, very popular event. I'm sure I will be talking about it more in the coming meetings. The next meeting of the Environmental Commission is not until September 4th, so we have a little hiatus here over the summer. As Ms. McPherron pointed out, the Rock the Park concert series is starting. Our first concert, I believe, is Thursday the 17th, Sidewalk Prophets. So we hope to see you there. And that is all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Council, I apologize for being late to caucus. I was in Nordonia watching my son compete at the conference championship. So, unfortunately, it was the last event still going on. All the other kids left. But sometimes it takes time with pole vaulting. So, but anyway, just a couple of things to talk about. We have still working with Amazon, trying to get them open. They had, the last storm we had, they had some damage to their roof, which has affected their operations. We've been working with them to try to get them kind of partitioned off so they can resume some type of normal operations, but I'll keep council up to date as they make progress with that. Again, we mentioned Rock the Park, a couple concerts coming up in May. We do have Sidewalk Prophets next week, and then a reggae festival at the end of the month. So I know both those tickets are selling, but I encourage everyone to come. Looks like we're going to have some nice days, at least for next week. So, another big lineup for this summer. A couple of things going on from an economic development standpoint. I've been getting, I know, some emails, and we've been on top of it. But Swagelok from Solon. So if you know anything about Swagelok, is looking to expand their corporate headquarters somewhere close to Solon in Northeast Ohio, and they've sent out an RFP to different communities. So we're in discussions with Swagelok, and we'll be aggressively trying to find space for them to build something. So it is an exciting event for, or project, I guess it would be, for a community here in Northeast Ohio. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity to be really seriously considered for that. It'd be great for Twinsburg. I will be going to a Mayor's Day in Columbus. It's the Northeast Ohio Mayors Association has put together an event, just getting mayors together, just discussing some upcoming legal and political issues that are going on. So I'll be attending that. I wanted to announce that we have a new performing arts center. It's going to be coming to town, the Twin Math Performing Arts Center. They have a ribbon cutting on May 11th, so if you're around, I'll try to get times to council to attend that. And then lastly, the scholarships was mentioned, and I just want to thank, I do a scholarship myself to a graduating senior, and this year I had 58 applicants, and so, you know, it was a lot. I read every one of them. I spent a whole weekend going through them, but you know, as a parent and with kids in the school district, I'm really proud of what our school district's able to do for our kids, and you know, we have a lot of really talented kids that are graduating this year, and it's a shame that I can only give one scholarship, but I just want to thank all those that did apply and spend the time and the effort in writing the essays and all that they did to apply for those. And I know the same is for Environmental Commission for what they give out. And then other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Now I move on to
Department head report.
Department head, sorry.
All right. Chief Duggar?
Good evening. During the month of April, the City of Twinsburg Communications Center generated 2,505 calls for service among the Twinsburg Police and Fire Departments and the Reminderville Police and Fire Departments. The total for the year is 10,200 calls. Twinsburg police officers arrested or cited 97 suspects into court on 140 different counts. Twinsburg officers issued 206 written warnings and 9 parking citations. Officers investigated 31 traffic crashes, of which 4 were injury crashes, 2 were on private property, and none were fatal. National Peace Officer Memorial Day is Tuesday, May 15th, so next Tuesday. Please join us in lowering your flag to half-staff that day in honor of those who've made the ultimate sacrifice in service of their communities. Also, next council meeting, I'll be presenting the annual legislation for the Detective Bureau car leases. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief Morgan?
Good evening.
Good evening.
During the month of April, the Twinsburg Fire Department responded to 233 calls for assistance. That brings us up to 973 for the year, about an 8% increase over last year's call volume. Among the notable events, ultimately, it's already been mentioned, the Amazon event. We responded up there and assisted them with evacuation of the building and addressed a natural gas leak and transported 2 of their employees to the hospital with minor injuries. Pretty significant hole torn in the roof and structural damage to the roof members, about in excess of approaching 200 trusses were damaged. And about 20% of the roof is going to need to be replaced. So they're working on that, as the mayor had mentioned. We completed 60 fire inspections through the course of the month and also worked on 2 different fire investigations. We had 13 hours of public education presented through the course of the month and 141 training events totaling almost 400 hours of training. Points of interest, the weather warning sirens were tested on May 5th, and they all worked except for the one on Bavaria Road is still causing issues, but the Township Service Department is working on repairing that. And the fire department will be commencing our annual hydrant flushing process. So between the city and the township, there's over 1,900 hydrants that will be touching all of them and flushing them. And this is important for us to make sure they're operating properly, their caps are lubricated, and ultimately good for you because it flushes a lot of sediment out of the water lines. And we'd just like to advise the residents that if after our presence in the community, your water runs a little cloudy, just let it run for a while until it runs clear. And we recommend you do that on the cold side, not on the hot side. So you don't run any of that sediment in your hot water tanks. So, and be careful with our guys out in the streets doing that, give them a wide berth. We'd appreciate that. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? All right, I guess Sarah?
Good evening.
Good evening.
So our balance in our city accounts, on the bank side, we've got 8.95 million. On our investment accounts, we have 12.38. That's down from March end, just about $192,000. Our revenues through April 30th are 18.73 million. Our expenses are 19.75 million. So we have expenses over revenues of just over $1 million. Our interest earnings are still up for the year, but I did reach out to our investment advisors, Meter. I just want to make sure we're on the same page that as we have this rising interest rate market, we're looking at shorter termed maturities so we can take advantage, make a little more money. That's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have.
That's all we have. Okay, then we'll move on to legislation. First, we have Ordinance 56, 2018.
An ordinance establishing Chapter 769 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Twinsburg, creating donation box regulations.
Okay, that was the second reading. Next, we'll move on to Ordinance 58, 2018.
An ordinance authorizing revolving petty cash funds for the golf course, repealing all ordinances in conflict therewith, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 58, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion. It was seconded by Ms. McFerrin. This is a $3,000 increase for petty cash at the golf course. The alcohol distributors have changed from weekly to bi-weekly delivery schedules, so they need more cash to pay. It's an emergency because the course is open and beginning to purchase the alcohol. Any further discussion?
No, I guess when we open full operations, we might need to adjust this again, depending on the level, or is this just contemplating?
When we open full operations for banquet, restaurant, and golf, we're probably going to be looking at turning around a check in a 24-hour period,
Okay.
which we're still looking into that policy-wise to make sure we can handle it properly and get those folks paid, because we don't want that kind of petty cash on site.
Yeah. Right.
So we will probably be switching that policy once everything's open.
Alcohol distributors are a different animal than others, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't really let you
They
get that
don't
on
let you
credit.
unless you pay 'em, so that's the way it
Okay.
works.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes?
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 58, 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Bellin. Shannon, any discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Ordinance 58, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 59, 2018.
An ordinance amending the current year appropriations for the general revenue account as established in Ordinance 101, 2017, the appropriation ordinance for the City of Twinsburg for the year 2018, and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 59, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Any discussion?
The reason for the emergency is that there are items on this list that we need to have, like chairs and tables, for the opening of the clubhouse.
Any other discussion? This is just the emergency part. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay, the emergency clause passes 7-0. Next, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 59, 2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Discussion.
In the caucus meeting, we had a discussion about this list and about the appropriation. I think it's been a topic of discussion was the one line item, which was the wedding patio for $50,000. And although we understand that it may be necessary, and we're not saying that we don't need it or that we shouldn't have the patio, we just feel right now that we would like to omit that from this appropriation and have the, and Mayor, if you'd like to go out to bid, that's fine, and we can always bring it back afterwards when we see where we are. I guess, a lot of these numbers, we're just looking at numbers, and same thing with that number, but I think there's a pretty strong feeling amongst council that we'd like to admit that right now, and then we'll bring it back once you get your proposals or your 3 bids, or whatever, however you're going to handle that. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to amend Ordinance 59, 2018, and reduce that number, remove line item wedding patio for $50,000, and reduce that number to $288,800.
I'll second. Yield.
Okay, Mr. Scafidi made a motion. Mr. Fury seconded.
Any discussion?
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to thank the council. I mean, I know this has been a long, tedious kind of process. I know it's got us all on edge in terms of trying to get this thing done and the money that we need to appropriate. This was a situation where, yeah, we threw it out to the contractor when we first kind of designed it. We've been talking about it for months, and the contractor came back with an extremely high number. I think we can beat that tremendously. And so the number that was in there right now was a placeholder. I'd like to go out to at least get some proposals on it. It may be under the 50 grand, so it may not have to go to public bid. So
correct.
I will go out and get at least 3 proposals to do this. I don't know if Abby had a chance to share anything, but it's something that I think is significant to the space. I think it's significant to the venue, and it's very significant in today's marketing of wedding venues. So I will get numbers, I'll get it back to council, and then we can decide as a group, you know, how we move forward. You know, I'll do that probably quickly, just because if we got dirt and everything torn up now, it probably makes a lot more sense to try to do it sooner than later. But I'd hate to come back and tear up landscaping and asphalt and, you know, next year. So as soon as I get those, I'll pass them on to council.
Mayor, I have a question. Is there, I know there's been some concern among some of the members of the location of this patio. Is there any wiggle room there, or is this definitely where it has to go? And the question about the location is because it's right on that cart path. And at one time you had mentioned closing down the hole when there's a wedding. And now, from what Abby tells us this evening, that's not the case anymore. That it's not going to close. They'll still be able to play through and while the wedding's going on.
Yeah, so there was a lot of discussion regarding the placement of that, where it would go, where it would fit, the connectivity to the patio, the presence of those stairs coming down into that space, I think is very dramatic, and has been one of the selling features when we've talked to brides about it. Part of what I sent you today was, and it didn't have a landscape plan, but it showed the design of a trellis that would go there. There'd be a landscape buffer, a small retaining wall, so anyone that, if there were, I mean, carts come off a hole about every 20 minutes. A typical wedding ceremony might last 45 minutes. So you might have a set of carts that would drive from number, what is now 9 across. Carts are not going to interfere with it coming off of 18. It's going to be, you know, 150 yards to the left. And we talked about different ways of placing signs when weddings were going on up at the green saying, be aware there's a ceremony going on, and we'd ask you to, you know, be quiet so that hopefully Miss Putz, they're not screaming out expletives. But I think we talked significantly about that because I think there was concerns for everyone. It fits that space. When that path got redesigned and it created this big open area between the path and those stairs, and if you look at the design, I think it's beautiful. And I mean, it's been a huge selling point and a talking point with people that are looking to book the venue. And really, it's not just weddings. I mean, it's not going to sit there empty. I mean, you know, we can tent it. It's designed where we can tent it. We can do cocktail hours. We can do a lot of different things with this particular space. But I mean, back to your question, is there wiggle room? I just don't know where else that would have the same impact and effect and marketability that we could put it. It's, you know, when you stand back there and you have these stairs and you can picture a wedding party coming down those stairs and walking up a center aisle with guests sitting there, I think it'd be a beautiful ceremony and something that would be really marketable to new brides.
And we don't have the lay of the land there. There's no way to redirect the carts coming across from the new number 9.
There may be. We haven't really.
I don't know if you try right there at the south end of the building. That's pretty steep.
It's pretty steep. Yeah.
And
I've looked at. It's not any steeper than climbing up hole number 2. So now hole number 11. So when you look at the redesign of that cart path, I ran it this morning. It's steep.
That's pretty steep.
You have to lean into it. So
yeah, I was just say that's
that's
steep over there.
Too. So I think there's opportunity to do that, because I was actually walking it, looking out where if you were rerouting some carts, there's a space right kind of by the dumpster that we could do a small curb cut. They could dump out in the parking lot and, you know, go on their way. You know, and so it may mean if we're doing $1,000 ceremony there, we post one of our seasonals and just direct 2 carts, because really during a ceremony on a Saturday at 4:30, 5 o'clock, you're probably not going to have much cart traffic coming through there. But
well, this also gives us time to have more discussion on this as well. Some ideas, you know, like I said, you know, think out of the box. You know, what other ideas you had? Everybody's got. But, you know, I understand that this would, you know, I appreciate the patience with this, taking time and taking through getting some bids and seeing what's really going to cost is important.
No matter what you guys are doing tonight, I was still going to find some prices for it, because I just don't know the cost. I mean, what I'm sitting on right now, I think, is completely overpriced. So I think there's conversations with service. It's not a complex patio. It's about 1,900 square feet of concrete. It's got a simple drainage system with some perforated pipe and one drain. So it's, it's not a complex thing. So for me, the dollar amounts just didn't make sense in terms of the first price we got. So I threw in a number that was half of the first price we got and figured I'd go get real estimates for it. So I was planning on doing that anyway. But so I don't have a problem with what you guys are doing tonight because, yeah, we need to know numbers. And I mean, it's like with everything we're purchasing here. I mean, whether you budget or not, I'm working real hard to minimize the amount spent. So I'm focusing on money spent. The budget can be whatever the budget is. I'm still doing the same process of making sure we're spending the least amount of dollars there.
So, well, the question is, what savings are we going to have credited from the contractor that he's not doing if we are doing this?
I can find that number out. So there would be some landscape and probably some sidewalk connections that were probably part of the bid. So there may be some savings that would come back to us. And
I don't remember what it looked like, but
yeah, it's the same thing when we were looking at not tearing down the clubhouse. That was a $25,000-$30,000 savings by not tearing that down. But so there would be some. I don't know how significant. It's probably some landscaping and a sidewalk. That's probably what we'd say. But I can find that out too.
That's a good question. Okay, where are we now? Now we need to
Call the roll on the amendment.
call the
Yeah,
roll,
call the roll.
please.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes. Okay, the amended motion passes 7-0. Now,
Make the motion for adoption as amended.
I need to make a motion to adopt ordinance 59-2018 as amended. Is there a second?
And as an emergency.
And, we already did the emergency, right?
Yeah, we did the emergency.
Still part of the.
And still have to do it and as an emergency?
No, you already did it as the emergency, and this is just as amended.
As amended,
Yep.
okay. So I made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's fine. It doesn't matter.
All right, I'm not sure. Okay, Ms. McFerrin seconds. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Ordinance 59-2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 60-2018.
An ordinance amending the 2018 annual appropriation ordinance providing for the ordinary expenses and other necessary expenses of the City of Twinsburg, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018.
Okay, that's the first reading. Next, we have ordinance 61-2018.
An ordinance amending Section 147.38 of the codified ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regarding employees generally.
That is also on its first reading. Next, we have ordinance 62-2018.
An ordinance amending Chapter 531 of the codified ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regarding cigarette and tobacco vendors.
Also on its first reading. Next, we have resolution 63-2018.
A resolution authorizing the city engineer to prepare and submit an application with the 2018 Great Lakes Restoration Initiative.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 63-2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Barr. This is to allow our engineer to prepare and submit an application for $50,000 with an 80-20 match. Planting some trees would limit the amount of mowing required on some of the city-owned property, and it will also replace some of the trees that were lost to the emerald ash borer. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Resolution 63-2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 64-2018.
An ordinance rezoning certain property located at 9101 Ravenna Road, Twinsburg, Ohio, from R3 use to C2 use.
That stands on its first reading. Next, we have ordinance 65-2018.
An ordinance rezoning certain property located at 1816 East Aurora Road, Twinsburg, Ohio, from C2 use to R5 use.
That is also its first reading. That's the end of our legislation, so now we're going to move on to unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. Mr. Fury?
Is there an action associated with the fire reports that we were distributed tonight? Is there, are we going to review these?
John Knaus gave all of council a packet.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if you guys want to take a look at those.
You know,
there
it has the
can be-
99 report that I'm familiar with and the new one. I just was curious what are we having a process or are we?
It was something that was just delivered by one of our firemen, so you're welcome to take a look at it, and then we can, I guess, have a further discussion on it.
Thank you, I have nothing further, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Steele?
I have nothing further.
Mr. Scafidi?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Okay, I would like to just thank the Twinsburg Youth Softball League for inviting City Council to represent at the ceremony, their opening day ceremony at Glen Meadow Park. It was May 5th. I have to say I didn't do my best on that first pitch.
Overhand or underhand?
Oh, it was underhand. It's not an easy thing to do. I can go overhand, but they gave me a mulligan though, so I got to do it again. Second round was great, but the really nice. What a wonderful organization though. The people there work so hard. So I'd like to thank them and say I really enjoyed doing that. It was,
As long as you didn't hurt yourself.
I did. Well, I hurt myself practicing all week long, but it didn't make a difference. So, but no injuries. But a lot of great people. So I want to thank the softball league and the baseball league, for coming out and putting that in. I really do appreciate all their hard work. That's all I have, Ms. McFerrin.
So now, at this time, I would like to make a motion to have the building department file for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the old White House at the intersection of 91 and Post Road.
A second.
Any discussion?
I don't think that house has been, since it was privately owned and the city took it over approximately 12 years ago, there really isn't a use for it, and it's infested with, things.
Yes, things.
That would make it really, and black mold, that would make it unsafe for really anybody to inhabit it. It blocks a trailhead, would make a nice small gravel parking lot to come in and out of the trail right there. And I appreciate Ms. McFerrin's motion. We've discussed this for well over a year. I think we need to make progress.
Any other?
As long as we make some memorialization of the fact that part of that was one of the original one-room schoolhouses, I think that would be a nice thing to do.
I would be in favor of that as well.
I agree.
We're all in agreement there.
Great. Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. McFerrin?
Yes. Let's see. Even though I didn't have my sticker on, I did vote today, and I want to thank the residents who did vote. Hoping that the 8th graders are having a great trip to DC, and wishing all the moms a happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Bellin.
Good evening. Just a couple things this evening. I wanted to give props, for lack of a better term, to our police department. I'm sorry that Chief Noga left. I reached out to him the other day. I had several residents in Corbett's Farm reach out to me inquiring about the speeds through Corbett's Farm. And within about 3 hours, Chief Noga got back to me letting me know that they're going to put some officers in there. They're also going to set up, they've got portable digital speed signs so that we can understand the baseline. My big concern is there's a slew of young families in there, myself included. And I know that we're going to get additional traffic coming through there, especially once we start the construction of the Meadowwood roundabout, because that's going to be their only way out for a while. So I just really do appreciate Chief Noga responding very quickly. Also, I more props to the police department. I've noticed quite a bit of additional police activity at the roundabout, and I know I've had several residents reach out to me and thank me for that. So again, I really do appreciate it. I also want to recognize the Twinsburg Board of Education. If you've been following this Discovery Tours story, I won't go into all the details, but long story short, this company that planned all of our, many of our school trips, including the one to DC, I think they went bankrupt eventually.
They did.
Yeah, they went bankrupt, essentially leaving many families across the state without trips. I know they had to cancel the mentor trip and those kind of things. And our board proactively went out and they approved a resolution which ensured that the funds would be appropriated to cover the costs associated with the eighth grade trip to Washington, D.C. My family was not personally affected by that. I know there are so many families that were, and I really do appreciate that because that's really a trip of a lifetime for those kids. So I just really do appreciate it. That's all I had this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barr.
I actually do have just one or two things I suppose I'd like to say. I don't know if it's self-aggrandizing or a bit of an editorial. I would like to just get on the record how closely several of my colleagues and the mayor have worked together to come to some real middle ground on this clubhouse. As we wind to a close here, I can sit up here and safely say I feel all my colleagues want to use your words, Mrs. Stauffer, walk hand in hand with the mayor through a clubhouse that we're all proud of. I think it's very important to note that it is a golf course first and a restaurant and banquet center second. The willingness to make compromises on things on both our part and the mayor's part is welcome and appreciated and not something seen in every city. The patio, maybe much to Ms. Fechter's dismay, is maybe a little bit of a scapegoat of what's going on here, and I am very appreciative of Councilman Scafidi taking the opportunity to give us all some pause and take a few minutes to look at how we can be best stewards of the people's money, because that's really what we're here to do. To the mayor, we appreciate your willingness to go out and get some bids. I would encourage you to find all-encompassing bids that include more than just the concrete, but are everything else, so we don't have $32,000 project creep that turns into a $58,000 patio. I think that's something we all fear. That's really all I have. I think this is going to be a terrific opportunity for the city. I think it's great that despite some differences on things, that we can work together as a group to find some common ground and just continue for the greater good and the citizens of Twinsburg. That's really all I have.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Barr. Yes, thank you. Mayor.
Thank you. There's nothing else for me this evening.
Okay, Mr. Maestros.
Nothing, thank you.
Shannon?
I won't be at the next meeting, so Dave will read everything for you.
Oh, all right.
We'll make sure it's a long meeting.
Okay. All right, with all of that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Looks,